Oh, it looks like.
A lot of people here today.
Oh, what's going on? People hate React or
They
just
might be
hate?
reacting to
Or
React.
is it just me?
You didn't smell when you came in, Daniel, so you're good.
Let's start that then. Maybe it's too cold in Phoenix.
I almost think that.
Oh, really?
I asked Google how cold it was. She's like 45 degrees. I'm
You're
like,
like, no. Could be that. Well, it's my first year here anyway, so I've been in colder places, so I don't know.
it's so, it's because it's the
Cloudy.
like humidity
Yeah.
outside. It's like really bitter.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Good morning, guys. Let's go ahead and get started. So today is start of week 20. All right. So 20, remember, ends at week 24. So four more weeks to go. The last two are again the project week. All right. So this week, just to give you a high level, we'll still be doing React, some more advanced concepts. So if you still kind of know React, it's okay, but please do go back and review the week 1 stuff because everything else now is kind of getting advanced. I'm going to be a little bit faster. I need to cover a lot of stuff. So some of the exercises I'll be doing live coding. Some of them I'll show you the code and then you will do the exercise I will upload the solutions also. They are already there right now. So download the code, look at it, and then try to attempt the exercises. Okay. So for today, we are going to look into maps, forms, and router, React router, very important topic. And then I'll just mention the homework. It's already there on GitLab, so please do look at the homework for next week. That's due next week. Okay. So maps and form, I'll be honest, it might be a little bit revision for the Monday, Wednesday class, but we do have exercises for forms for today, so I'm going to cover that. I'm going to briefly and quickly go over maps for my class as well, just as a revision for you guys, because we'll be using these two a lot in our future exercises. Okay. So 12 and 13, I'll start with number 12 and 13, give you a brief overview and a quick overview for maps, and then we'll begin with number 1, form, and then we are going to look at some AJAX calls. How do you make AJAX calls in React? Okay. Let's see what else do we have. Yeah. So AJAX and then React router. React router is a more advanced topic, and we'll be looking at that today. I'll talk more when we get there. Okay. So first thing is, excuse me, maps. So you guys remember from our previous lecture we had we did this exercise where there were SpongeBob friends and all of them come up on the screen. Let me quickly run this so that it kind of refreshes your memory how the UI looked like. This is 12. And I am going into view. So, okay.
Activities week 19 or 20?
Number 12 is from the last week, from the Thursday. You probably already have done it. I just want to, I'm going to just show you, and then we'll come back to a regular one. Okay, so you guys remember this one? We did this exercise. We created friends component, and after that we had a friends JSON file, right? We were reading all the data from that and then showing over here. So this was something, remember this file, we had this file, we were reading from the JSON file, and then in our app.js, we were outputting everything. All right. So when we started this exercise, it had many components, and you guys kind of shrunk into, because we were following the dry principle. So we kind of came up with a fewer components, so to remove our repetition, right? But still, there's some repetition going on, and we can add a loop to this one also, and then loop through it instead of writing this all out. Okay. Now, looping in JavaScript, some other functions. One other function is for each, and then in jQuery you have $.each. Okay. You cannot use $.each over here because we are not using jQuery. We don't have it added. We don't have to add it over here. So $.each is out. The second option is use a for each. All right. You can use for each, but the problem with for each over here is when you loop an array, React is expecting an array back. It's expecting a return type. Whenever you are looping through anything, you put anything in a loop over here. What JSX or React is, what they expect is that when you loop through that array, you also return the same array. It has to have a return type. So for each, if you guys remember, it doesn't have a return type. It's void. So we cannot use for each. There, excuse me. The remaining looping method that stays is the map method. And if you look at the React documentation, we are now down over here, list and keys. All right. So if you look at the documentation, they have mentioned the map JavaScript map function, and they are saying that JSX recognizes it. It's compatible with it. So we have to use the map method whenever we are trying to loop through anything. Okay, loop through an array. So let's see how we are going to use this. Map method is similar to for each. It takes a callback function. The difference is it returns an array. Okay, and that's what React wants. Yes.
Question. But
Yes.
not about the maps.
What about the what?
Not about the maps.
Oh, okay.
It's about title. So we've got that friends list, and in the title JS we use the props children.
Yes.
But we could as well do that over there. I can write friends list, and here just delete that, and it works as well.
You can do that.
So there's one way it's more preferable, or
Oh, yeah. So this way is more preferred because React is all about components, right? They want you to break it down in as many components as you can, and logical components. So that's why this is a good practice, that you keep everything separate. And if you see the title, it's kind of reusable now. If I have a different page, right now we just have one page application, so you don't see the benefit. But if I have another page, I can use the same title in that page too. I don't have to, hard code over there too.
okay, that's why.
Yeah.
props
So
children.
components is because they are very reusable.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why. So that's why it's good practice to separate them out. Good question though. All right, so let's see how do we write our map function. So I'm going to, you see the repetition over here. This is the friend card, it's repeating. So I want to put my map function and then keep writing these. Okay, so let's start with the curly braces. Curly braces because we are writing our JavaScript code that needs to be evaluated. It's not HTML or JSX tag anymore. In our friend, so this is my array. Okay, I'm using this friends array from the friends.json file, and then it's the map function. Okay, now I said map function is similar. It takes a callback function, so you have to define a function. Again, you can define the function with the this method, the anonymous function one, but since we have looked at this ES6, so I'm trying to get into the habit of writing the using the arrow functions. So the first thing is let me create a variable called friend and arrow function, and then I'm going to put the code. Okay, so the first parameter is anything that you are passing in. So friend means when you're looping through the friends array, it's going to pass that friend object. It's going to loop through, it's going to take one object and pass it in. The second object, pass it in. Third object, pass it in. Okay? And then what you can do is after that is just creating this tag again and again. Okay, let me put this in this line. Okay? So this is how you write the map. There's still a mistake over here, we'll fix it. If you see, I'm still using friends 0 everywhere. Okay, since I'm looping through, I don't need this anymore. I already have a variable called friend, this one, and I just need to use this. And this will loop through this. Friends, okay. This thing, I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to remove this. And this should work as it is. So this should be running. Let's go back. Okay. So you see no changes, nothing broke, everything still comes up. And this is working because I already have this running in my background, so it just refreshes my page as soon as this is saved. But this is how you use the map function. Again, map works on arrays, so friends is an array.map, and then you put in your callback function. All right. The reason you will see there's no curly braces over here, if you remember from our arrow function, if there are multiple lines, you need to put it in a curly bracket. This tag is considered one line, even though it's still in separate lines for us, but from React perspective and the compiling perspective, it's still one line, all right, because the node ends over here. Okay, so this is how you loop through any collection in React. All right, any questions? Okay, so yes.
So in the map, after if you use the curly braces, we have to write return. But
You have to write
if we use
yes.
the curly, we don't
Right.
have to write return. Okay.
Good point, yes. If you're using curly brackets, then you have to write the return statement. But since this is just one line, it kind of automatically assumes that this is what you're going to return. Okay? All right. Now let me quickly go over the next one is the component map. Again, you guys must have already seen it, but I can use the same thing in my props also. I can pass the whole thing in my props and then use that also. Let me show you what I mean. So I already have this component map created over here. I used npx create react app and then component map, so it's already there. I don't have any components, so let's suppose I'm going to remove this. Okay, let's see what I let me create an array here of groceries. Okay, this is an array of objects. All right, so I'm creating one groceries, and I'm going to pass this into my component to show you guys that you can use the same map function on your props also. All right, so let's suppose I have ID 1, name is milk, and then I also have a boolean purchased is true. So this is right from the previous example. Let me put something different here and give it a different ID. Okay, so this is similar to I have a array that is outside my outside the file that we saw, friend.json. It's very similar to it, and then I'm going to create a component that I'm going to pass this array in. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a component called list components going to create a component called list.js. All right. So this is going to be a function component. So I don't have to worry about creating a class. I'm just going to use the React. Okay, and then create a function. And this will have props in it. Okay. Now what my list function, list component is doing is going to list out everything that's in my array. That's all it's doing. List out on the string, on the screen. So I have my return. Okay. I'm going to use the UL tag. So it's going to be your UL unordered list, and then you're going to use a bunch of LIs and then output everything. All right. So I have these LIs, and I'm going to output all the LIs with my information. Okay. Now, since I have props over here, let me call this function so that I can pass this array. This. Let me add this import dot slash component slash list. Okay, and then I have my list here. Create the JSX tag list. Okay, now I'm going to pass in my props. All right, so I'm going to call it groceries, and then pass in this array on the top. Okay, any questions on this? I just created a component, and remember the props. I can pass props to my component. From my app.js, I'm passing in an array to my list component. All right. So in this props, I will receive props dot groceries. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to loop through my props dot groceries and create these LIs. I want to create multiple LIs while looping through my groceries. All right. So let's go back and remember you're using your JavaScript function in JSX. So start with the curly braces. All right, and then just use the array. So this time the array is called prop.groceries because I'm passing with that name, and then my map function. All right, same as what we did in the friends. All right, array, and then use the map function. And in my map function, now I'm going to loop through it, use the arrow function, and then create all the LIs inside it. Okay. So let's call this item. I'm going to pass this. So this LI, I want to create it inside. So I'm going to create this inside. Okay. So this is the basic syntax, and this is how you do it. Now inside LI, we will fill up the item detail, but this is how you do it. You loop through your array, and then create multiple items with it. Okay. The next part is simple in this. Let's go back and see. In my groceries, I have name. I can use the name. So I can access it saying item dot name. All right, and then this will output whatever that name is. All right, so it will create. Right now I have 2 in my list, so it will go ahead and create 2 items and show it on the screen. All right. Let's see. What is this? This just declared but never used. Oh, missing the export. Okay, should fix it. Okay. All right. Any questions on this? Are we good? Kind of getting an idea how to loop through the array in JSX? All right. Let's run this, and then we can come back and see. 13. Okay. So this is how your list will come out. Okay. So you're looping through and I'm outputting on the screen. The another convention that part of it is that when you're creating a list, there is a attribute key, and usually we assign the key to this attribute. Okay. So let's suppose my key is the ID. So this is what I do. Kind of helps you when you're retrieving the data, and that's the convention. And if you look at the documentation, they have mentioned to specify keys for each element that you are using. So this way, right now we don't see it, but when you are retrieving the data or when you are doing some manipulation, you would be referring to the key because the name could be repeatable, right? You could have the same name again and again, but you need some unique ID to differentiate between the list items. So usually it's going to be key. So this is the kind of good standard practice. Start from this. Every time you're looping through, you're creating an element, use the key attribute and then assign a unique attribute that you think from your array is. Okay? Yes.
We can get the same effect if we write that map in the map file instead of this.
You can do this what?
Can you do the map that the groceries in the app file in the app file instead of list file?
Yeah, you can do that
Yeah,
because
you
you have access to groceries over
Yeah.
here. Yes. Yeah, you can do the same thing with it. Yep. Yes.
So let's say you have Mongo connected to it, and you link to the Python, like the piece of
Yeah.
ID in React, so you can call that ID for you.
Yeah. So that's a good example. It will help you. Suppose now on your list, when you see the screen, on the screen you are just seeing this, right? Now I can have milk twice over there, but when I retrieve it, exactly, I wouldn't know which exact record it corresponds to, and that's where the ID will help me. Yep, good point. Yeah. All right, so start with this, and we'll see when you do some more exercise, you will see how this key comes into play. All right, especially with your databases, as Gareth was mentioning. All right. Any other questions with the map part? All right. So if you're looping through, use the map. JSX kind of recognizes it, and it works fine with JSX. All right. All right. Next part we will look at is the forms. So this is from today. We'll look at this part. Okay. Now forms is, if you guys remember from the HTML, the forms, you put in a label, you have text box and all that stuff, and then you have a submit button. Usually you submit it, and the data from there flows wherever it has to go. Maybe a new page to your database or all that stuff. Okay. Now forms in HTML is kind of a little bit different, that they maintain their own state. All right. If you guys remember from the last lecture, state in React was a variable that we were using within our component, right? We want to save something, we want to manipulate something, so that's where we use the variable called state in React, right? So forms, although HTML forms, they don't have a variable called state, but they do maintain their state. All right, and why do they do that? Because remember, form, you have to type in something and you submit it, it has to do some manipulation. So for that manipulation, forms has their own mechanism. Now we don't have to worry about how they do it and what happens, but it should give you an idea that forms have their own thing going on. They're saving their own state, whatever they are doing, because that's how HTML forms are. Okay. Now these work fine with React too, but what a little bit changes are the React says that make the React component that is using that form like the source of truth, like only worry about that component. Take that feature of the state manipulation from the forms, from the HTML forms, and give it to the component, the React component that is making the forms. All right, two different things. We have HTML forms, and then we have React. React is using those forms. The only thing React is saying, whatever the forms are doing, don't let them do their stuff. Let React do their stuff. Okay? And that's why we will see how that happens. You won't see any much code changes, but behind the scenes, you are giving the power to React to do all the state changes and everything from HTML forms. Okay. From the technical point of view, again, if you are doing this, you are giving the power to React. The component is called control component. All right. Now that component, the React component, is controlling all your forms, all the state that belongs to the form, and all that stuff. Okay. Again, concept is good, but remember the name also. Again, if usually in interviews they can ask you what do you mean by control components, give an example. Forms is a really good example, and you can explain that how React is saying, hey, don't use the HTML forms, but give the power to my component, to the React component, and that component we call control component because that's controlling everything now. Okay. Any questions on this? The coding part we will see, it's not any different from when you create a HTML form, but from the concept, this is what's happening behind the scenes. Okay. All right. So let's see. Okay. Let me show you this, how this is working, and then I'm going to show you the code behind how this is working. Oops. So this is exercise 1 for today, and it's called form solved. Okay. So first off, what I have, let me run this and then I'll show you. Okay, that's what I was going to do. npm start. We'll see how this form is working and how do we achieve this. All right. So this is my form. All right. It's no different from any HTML code that you write. You can create that this form using HTML, right? Now what this form is doing, if I type anything, you see what's happening? It's taking this and kind of putting it over there. All right. That's all it is. Now, from our perspective, it kind of looks simple. I'm like, well, that's kind of simple. But please note that the page is not refreshing. There's nothing going on. Everything is still, it's kind of taking that stuff and kind of rendering it on the screen without refreshing, right? Again, once you have worked a lot more in web development or you had worked with previous technologies, when I first saw this was like mind blowing to me because we have to write a lot of code just to get here, but yeah, kind of makes it very simple. So that's what happened. Without refreshing, without anything, my things are coming up over here, and with my submit button, there's an alert. I'm kind of refreshing the page. All right. Now again, this submit, all this stuff has been the control has been taken from HTML forms and given to our control component, which is part of the React. Okay. Now I'll show you how this is working. So I created my formal review using npx create React app formal review. Okay, created all this bunch of stuff. Start with app.js, really straightforward. I created a component called form, and that's what it is doing. Okay. So all the stuff is in the form part. Okay. Now I mentioned form is kind of maintaining the state. So what do you guys think would be the component? Would it be a function component or a class component? Class component. When you're using state, it cannot be a function component. All right. So that's the biggest giveaway. If you're using anything related to state variable, it has to be a class component. All right. Awesome. So let me minimize this. Right. So first off, it's a class component. All right. So this is how you create the class component. All right. Class form extend the component. The next part you see is the constructor. Remember from the previous class, the components come with some functions already built in, like the constructor, render. There's one more called did mount component. We'll see that later on. Of those, only render is the one that is mandatory. Other are kind of optional. But when I'm initializing my state, since it's a class, it could be like a habit from my Java programming language or something, but I like to initialize my state in the constructor. And if you see React also, some of the examples you will see they're using constructor. It might be just a habit from that. But you can initialize this outside the constructor also. You don't have to write this constructor. You can just initialize your state outside like this too. This will also work. But in my examples, you will see I try to put it in the constructor because I think this is where all the initialization belong. Okay. Again, a word of caution: if you're using the constructor, you see that super keyword. It's really important, and React is actually looking for it. So please do make sure that you put in super. Call this function every time. Okay.
Is this the preferred way?
From the documentation, you will see this is how the documentation also says that put it in a constructor and then put all the initialization over there.
Carson didn't do any of that.
Right. So there's the other way is, and you will see in the solutions for this exercises, is that you will see they are being initialized like this. Again, they both are fine. They will work from the code perspective. It's just what you prefer and how do you go about it. My preference is this. Some people don't have that preference, but it's perfectly fine. There's no, I wouldn't say there's a right or wrong way. Again, that's why I was saying that maybe it's a habit from my other programming languages, more object-oriented programming languages, because if you have a class, you definitely need a constructor over there. So it's kind of a habit from there.
I'll yell at Carson.
No, don't yell at Carson. Let's see where we are. We are on forms.
Question.
Yes. So hold on. We'll just so I see over here in these examples also they're kind of using the constructor. So kind of try to follow that. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to with the bind. So if we use the constructor, we have to use the bind, right? Functions.
Well, over here I didn't use the bind. Still works.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll talk about bind later on, but this will still work. Yeah, for functions. Yeah. Well, this is if you're using the function inside the initialization, I think. Yeah, we'll see what that is. All right. But again, initialization, you can do it over here outside. It's still fine. Okay. All right. So over here, I have my state. My state consists of two parts: username and password. All right. You guys already saw on the screen. This is how it is. Okay. Let's start with the render function. All right, so in the render function, I am creating a form, HTML form, a couple of p tags, and I have an input. I have two inputs. All right, we'll go through these variables in a minute. Okay, everybody good with this? Create a simple HTML form. I have two p tags, two input tags, and at the end I have a button. All right, let's start with the p tags. Okay. So in my p tags, I have username and I'm outputting the username from the state and the password. Now looking at this and looking at the screen, what part is that? Which one does it correspond to, those two things? The top one. Excellent. Yep. So these p tags are over here. So you see what is going on. As soon as I type in, it takes this username, whatever the state has, and then kind of prints it out. That's what it is. Okay. Now, the question would be, well, then this means that somewhere this is being set, and we'll see how, yes, this is being set, and we'll see how this is being set. Okay. Now, this is being set from the input. Input tag has your type, placeholder, name, same as HTML, no difference. All right, same attributes. Value is also the same attribute from your HTML. The only thing is value is being set similar to this one. We'll see how this kind of changes in a bit. On change is again the function, and it tells you that every time there's a change in the input box, call this function. That's what it is. Okay. Now what this means is, as soon as I type something in here, this function handle input change is being called. Well, we'll see what handle input change does, but at a simple level, that's what's happening. Okay. Any questions on the input? We'll look at these functions in a minute. Okay. The last one is a button, HTML button. No change over here. On click function. And on click, you're calling a function which is handle form submit. All right, we'll take a look at this, but again, this part is still this very same as when you create your HTML. Okay. All right, now let's take a look at these functions. The first, let's take a look at this one. Handle input change. Handle input change, you will see we are using the arrow function. Again, you can write it out as a function, handle input change, pass in an event, and it still will work. All right, we're just following the new convention, so that's how you do it. I have one parameter, and then I have multiple lines, so that's why I have these curly brackets. All right. So the first thing, if you see, is event. I'm passing in an event. Now, event has something in it. All right. Let's do I'm doing a console log over here, and I want you guys to take a look at what the event holds. Okay, this is what event has. It has looks like a HTML. It has input, type, placeholder, username, name, and the value. All right. Let me refresh this. Yes, should put in a letter. So as soon as I put in a letter, you see my handle input change is getting fired. All right. Every time I press a key, it gets fired. And the reason, and why am I saying this? Because you will see every time there's a console log, every time I type in something. See that? Okay. What was it?
Individual one for each.
Individual, yeah. Yep. It gives you the latest value that's in your input box. Now if I remove something, it will still give you that. All right. So that's what event is doing. Okay, and it gives you all these things. So event.target, that's the variable you want. Event.target gives you that line. Okay. Now event.target has a name and a value, and that's what we are interested in. We're interested in the name and we are interested in the value. So let me put something here. Let's take a look at this. So the name on the first box is username, the second box is password. All right, very important. Take a note of this. All right, and then the values. Okay. Now the first thing, what's going on line number 19? Any idea what line 19 is doing? It's kind of new syntax.
The
Yes.
structure, what was that word? Instead of like making the variable for each from the object parameter, we can just.
Okay.
What's
Yeah.
the word for that?
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
I
Yeah.
forgot the word.
That's okay. Yes, Dylan.
The event fires when the name value pairs change.
19.
Right.
Event fires when the name changes. Well, it's kind of close. The event is firing at this point anyway.
It's
So this
reallocating or deconstructing the
deconstruct. Yeah. So this thing, the event that you are saying, is going to get fired over here anyway. So this on change, every time there's a change in the input box, this whole event gets fired. But what I'm asking is just this line, what's going on over here? And as Adam is saying, Jesse is saying, so what's happening is this is a newer syntax which is same as this is exactly the same thing as the above one. Just a fancy way to write using the new syntax. Okay,
This is the
line number
deconstructing.
deconstructed. Yeah.
Deconstruct.
Yeah. So line number 19 and is equivalent of 21 and 22. It just kind of like comes together. With this new syntax, it's smart enough that it will find this name exactly. Now, if I put name 1 over here, will this work? It's not going to work because there is no name 1 property in our event.target. All right, it has to be like a one-on-one mapping. So you see that it gives me an error. Let me remove this and then show you guys. Yeah. So this name and value, it has to be one-on-one, and this is the only way it can find and assign that value. Okay.
Rename that.
You can rename them. Yes, exactly. It doesn't have to be name, but where would you rename it? You would rename it over here. So if I put name 1 over here, and then I put name 1 over there, then it's going to start working.
Can we rename it over there as like name as something else or something the syntax?
There is a name as, but that's in the import statement over here.
Yeah.
Name as. I don't know. I haven't.
Some kind of syntax. I don't know. If we could rename it.
There is a renaming syntax as, but what I've seen those are over here on the import.
Okay.
I'm not sure over here. I'll show you the import one. I'm not sure if you can change this. That's interesting. I'll have to look into it. But there is a syntax. I can do it in import statement using the as. We'll see that. Okay, so this is what this line number 19 is doing. All right. Now coming to this one, line number 25. So what is happening over here? I'm setting the state. Set state. I'm setting that state. All right. But what is important is line number 25. What's going on over here? Okay. So what this is saying is whenever there is a handle input change event fired, anything, whatever the value of name is, put that name or value over here. So right now when my event fires on username, eventually it will become username. When it's fired on password, this will become password. Okay, well, not the brackets. Okay, this is okay. So this evaluates to this thing. All right. Value is just the value, whatever you're passing in is equal to TRY, whatever that was, and password. That's what it is. So whenever the input fires, what it does is it says, hey, I don't know who fired that event. It could be password, it could be username box. You don't know, right? So that's why you have this dynamic state when you are saying whatever fired the event, just take that value and assign it to it. All right, assign it to this thing. All right. So if this was not the case, what we would have to do is you have to write on change handle input username event, and then you would have to write password event, and then in your method you would be setting this and saying assign the username state, username to value. Okay, and then you will be writing us another method saying the same thing and saying assign password this value. What is these things? These are these states that we are maintaining. Okay, now let's suppose you have 10 more input boxes. You will be writing 10 more functions for it. All right, this way you just have to write one function and it does, and it kind of dynamically finds out which was fired for and replaces this value and assigns the correct value. Let me change this back. Okay, and again, this is being replaced by these two, and these two are our state. Go back here and see. These two fields are our state. So we're assigning some value to our state. Okay. Submit. Submit is, there's nothing extra special going on. Event.prevent default. It's kind of a little bit different from the HTML submit one, but this is important, and this is kind of the control component I told you, taking the control from form and give it to React. This is what kind of helps with that too. So every time you're doing the submit form, you put in prevent default so that it knows what to do, and React will take care of it. So in this one, we are saying alert with the name, and then reinitialize them to empty strings. Okay, so form submit is nothing, it's not doing anything crazy. It's just throwing out an alert and then reinitializing everything. Okay, let me go back here. The more important is this part. Okay, especially this thing. Okay, all right. Any questions on this? So if you look at the screen, this is what is happening every time I type in something. Right? It takes this value and sends it to this state, and that's why it shows up on the screen. All right, and all this is happening inside the form. All right. Questions? Let me see. What do we have? Okay. All right, everybody good with the form? Okay, again, from the documentation, we are number 9 on the forms part. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next one, we're going to take. So we have covered a lot of these, and we'll come back to conditional rendering in a bit. But we saw introduction to JSX. We did the rendering elements, components, and props. You guys know now. State, you guys understand. Events, we just saw in the form. How do we do those events? List and keys is the map function that we saw, and then we just saw the forms. Okay. So these are the basic concepts. These are more like the design patterns, and I'll share this link and go and take a look at it, what those are. But the next part that we will see, we'll look at making some AJAX calls from React. Okay, right now it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a static page, but it's not really doing anything. And so we are slowly now we are going to enter into the AJAX calls, then look at the database calls, and kind of, come together with everything. All right. Close this up. All right. Any questions before we start the next one? Good. Okay. Again, this should be already in your GitLab. You can download it. Do you guys need a minute to create the app for this? Okay, I'll give you a minute. Again, for this part, I did my npx create React app, and I called it whatever, Ajax something. So this generated this module, and then I do have, let me see what I need here. Okay, you also need the Axios module. So once you have created the project, well, you guys are creating it from the from this 02, so it should already have the code and everything in it. You also need the Axios part, so go ahead and install Axios also. And what I did was, for my part, I just did npm install Axios. Okay, but if you guys are using yarn, I think the command is yarn add, and then the package name, which is Axios. Okay. Let me know if this doesn't work. I'm not using Yarn. I haven't tried it. I already have npm everything installed, so I didn't see a use as of for now. So I'm still on npm. But for the Yarn, if you guys are using Yarn, then use the Yarn add Axios, or just do npm install Axios once you have the project ready. This will install all your modules in node.modules. Okay. From the solution, the changes I did was, I think once you download it, it says it has a function component for app.js. I just converted it into a class one. That's all I did. And everything else should be the same. Yes. Yarn add Axios. Let me know if that doesn't work. I'm pretty sure that was the... It does? Okay, yeah, thank you. Huh? It's what? Huh? Yeah, well, even the create React app takes a while. Oh, Axios is taking longer? Interesting.
Watches the traffic on the net.
I could be that. All right, if you're installing Axios, let it install and just take a look at how the structure of the app is defined. Okay. So this is really important. We are kind of going into some of the design patterns that React uses. Again, you don't have to do this. You can put everything in one component or divide the components, but kind of follow your own thing. But this is a good design pattern, and you will see a lot of React applications using this design pattern. All right. So the first thing is, look at the app.js. It has search result container. So this tells me that app is the parent, and so I have app, and then I have search result container. I'll call it SRC. SRC. Okay. This is how this is. Okay. But I still have a lot of components over here. I still have two result list and search form. So since I don't see it in my app, I kind of figure out that it might be the child of this component. So let's take a look at search result container. And you see the import statements. All right, so this tells me, yeah, they both are children of these two components. All right, just to begin with. Search form and result list. All right. Just to be sure, let's look at the result list and see if it is using any import. Nope, that's the only import. Search form, React. Nope. Okay, so this tells me that this is the relationship right now. Okay, app, then the container, and then my two forms. Okay. All right, this is important. Now the word container, where is this coming from? If you see, it's called search result container, and then but these two doesn't have container in it, right? So this is a design pattern that you will see in React applications. They try to divide components that use props and components that use state. All right. Again, so React applications, again, you can put those two together, it will work. From the coding perspective, it doesn't matter. But from reusability, from looking at it, from dividing components in a better way, what developers try to do is create two separate components, each one for state and one for props. Okay. The reasoning behind is props, you cannot modify it, right? It's immutable. It never changes. all right? You can only use props, right? So anything that is for looking or is for view that you think your component is not going to modify anything, it's just going to be for view purposes, you're using props. So we call that component with whatever name it is. It's fine. State has to do with work, how the form works, how the component works. It's doing some manipulation, it's doing some work. All right? So if you have a component state, it's called container. Again, that's the convention. You can call it any name, but from the design perspective, anytime you see a component with a container, you can guess that it is doing some work, it is using state. Okay? That's the high probability that that's what's going on. Just by, I haven't even seen the code right now. And when I see my result list search form, I can kind of guess they're using props because they don't really have a container. And I'm going with the assumption that we are following the good design pattern, the standard practices, and every developer on my team is kind of following it. Okay? So that's how you divide it into. Okay? State is doing the work. Props is more for viewing. There's no changes, there's nothing going on. It's kind of making your web page look pretty with the data. That's what props are for. Right? Again, container, state, and this. All right. This last part, utils API.js. Again, this is not anything new. What's going on over here is making a API call to the Giphy API and getting the data. That's all it is doing. We have seen this in our previous exercises. Just doing this, create a search function that we're going to use it. But what this does is XU is kind of very simple to use, just one line and it works. So what it is doing is doing a get call to this URL, use this API key, and it will get the data back. Okay? All right. Any questions before we start looking into the code? All right. Again, that's also something that can be asked. What's a container? What do you mean by container? And how do containers work? So keep that concept in mind. All right. Let's start with the, let's see which one is the easy one. Okay. Before that, let me run this so that you guys can see what we are actually looking at. So this is exercise number 2. I'm going to call this Ajax. Start. But it's going to be a little bit extra slow because it's making a call and getting all the images back. Let's see. Okay, so some of the things to note over here. See these blue buttons and all this stuff. This is coming from Bootstrap. All right. So for that, what I did was I went to my public folder, index.html. You guys might not have it, so make sure you add this. Let me slide this out too. So this is for somebody is following. Okay, because in the solution you don't have this page anyway. Okay, that's one thing. And then the first thing you see is when I loaded, I didn't even put anything. These images are loading. So this is making an API call and getting all these images. One thing to know, we'll see how this is happening. So this means that on my page load, I'm calling the API. All right. So on my page load, I have to call an API to get this. The rest is, now I search, I do my search, hit the search button, and then it searches for new GIFs. All right. So looking at the components over here, you can see this has been divided mainly into 2 UI components, or the 2 props component, 2 view components, which are result list and search form. So if I had to take a guess, this is my search form over here, the first part. This is my result list. Okay, these are the 2 components. Again, these are, you can see these components on the screen. All right, again, one more hint over here. search result container is actually nothing is visible for this component on the screen, because that's the component that's doing all the work and everything. But the components that are visible are the search, form, and result. Yeah? So let's look at the search form one, because those are the more easier one. What's going on in search form? I have my form, input, and one button. All right. I have this label, this thing, and a button. Okay, that's what I have: label, input, button. All right. My input has some functions. We'll look at those functions, what those are. On change, value, name, type, those are simple HTML ones. This is the CSS one, so it's getting the CSS. Button has on click and is calling some function. We'll look at these two functions. Okay, so to see, you see props.handle input change, props.handle form submit. But these two are not over here. This is all my file. Where are these two methods? What was that? Search result container. Okay. Yep. So that's the correct answer. It's in search result container. Okay. But what, even if you don't know this name, search result container, what this is telling you that there's a parent component for search form. My search form there's a parent component that's passing in props, and that has the function. That's what it should tell you. Okay. In this case, the parent component is search result container, and that's the correct answer. But every time, if I don't have this, I'm looking this form and it says a props. What it should tell you is that there's this form, this component has a parent component, and this function resides in that parent component. Now, what is that parent component? We'll figure it out. But for now, I can tell that these methods, all of these are in that parent component somewhere else. Okay? All right. Let's go to the result list. Result list is all these images. All right. So since there's a list, we can take a guess at using the map method to call all those lists, and that's what's going on over here. Similar to what we saw in the first exercise. Okay. Map, and it's looping through them and adding those elements on the screen. Okay. Again, same thing. Props.result. I don't see anything result over here. It's coming from this. So a parent of this component is passing in that array also. That tells me. All right. From my diagram that I drew before, this is what I was saying, that start when you look at the code. Start with this. Try to figure out what the code is doing, how it looks first. Then look at the names, and then start digging in the code. Right. Now, if I look at it, it's a result list. Parent is passing. So this is my parent. Kind of take a guess as, okay. So search result container has that array. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the most important one that's doing all the work now. Okay. Let's start with the render function. So since this is the parent of these two, it has to be rendering these two elements, because my app.js is not doing that. Okay. So let's start with the last one. This is the easiest one, result list. I just have to pass in an array, and let's look at my constructor. I have two fields in my state, search and results is the array, and that's what's getting passed to my result list component. Okay, we'll see how this is set, but this is what's going on. Okay. Search form, you guys remember it had it's getting three properties, the search and two functions. All right, so this is the parent, and that's what's going on. So it is passing these props with these functions here. Okay, and since this is the parent, all these functions should be in this file, which they are. Okay. All right. You guys have any questions before we start looking into these functions? You guys kind of get the design, how this is working, how the code is distributed. Kind of. It comes with a little bit more practice. We'll do some more exercises, kind of get you familiar with it. But these are some good design patterns to keep in mind when you're creating your React app. Right? Kind of divide it further. First, we started with components. We are dividing everything in components. Now we are dividing our components even further. We are dividing it into components that use props, components that use state. Right? So you see how division is going on. All right. So let's take a look at.
Other question.
Yes.
Is the default takes cat?
Default what?
Takes a cat as the search.
Yes.
Where is the cat?
Yeah. We'll look at it. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with that. All right. So the question was the default is cats where this is going on. So I mentioned when you create a class component, you have a number of functions that are available, and if you look at the documentation, I am over here. I think it might be. Let's see. Yeah. So these are the functions that I mentioned. The second one is deprecated, so don't use it. So we saw constructor, we saw the render function, right? Of these, render is the more important and the mandatory one. The other two are optional. The third one is component did mount. Okay. From the name, it tells you what is happening in this method is when that component first shows up on the screen. Okay. When the first time search result container shows up on the screen, your component did mount will get fired, and that's the first method that's going to get called. So now if I want to load something default, I want to show something on my screen, which method should I put my code in? Component did get load. Okay, again, constructor, render, component did mount. These are all from React component library, right? So this is the exact name you would want to use. There are a few more. Component did update. We'll see these few other in a while, but right now, initialize the first screen, that first thing that you want to do when your component shows on the screen. Anything you want to do, the code goes over here. All right. What I want to do is I want to search kittens or cats, and then get the data and show on the screen. All right. So that's what's happening over here. Search Giphy. Again, this is a better way or a refactored code, but you can do this whole thing over here. It doesn't matter. This is don't worry about this code too much. It's we created a function which is taking your query, which is kittens over here, makes the call to this function in the search one and gets the result. That's what it is doing basically. Okay. Again, this is the same kind of AJAX call that we have seen in the previous exercises. Again, the only difference is this res arrow function. We are used to the anonymous function. Remember, we just do function and put it this in. Same thing over here. I did a console.log so that we can see what actually is coming back to us. So if I inspect this, this is all that is coming back to me. I have a data, meta, pagination, and all that stuff, but what I'm interested in is in this data part. Okay? So this is this thing. All right, I'm making a call to Giphy, getting all the data back, and in my data, the data resides in res.data.data. That's what I'm assigning this results array to. Okay. Any questions on this? Again, this is similar. It's just a new way to write this method. Might take some time to get used to it, but this is the same as writing the anonymous function and passing in a res, a variable. Yes.
Can you write the kittens in the search state as the default? Instead of
Yeah, you can do that too.
it work the same?
It will work the same. Yeah.
Okay.
You can put this in kittens and do it. I don't see any issue here. Yeah. But then what would happen is you will have to modify this method because it is expecting a variable. So you might have to kind of remove this or do something with it. Because this function is going to be used, where else this is going to be used?
So
In the search, we have to use this, keep using this function, and whatever somebody types in, we have to pass that in. So that's why it's
we
kind
have
of
to start
separated.
the function on the result.
If you put
Yes.
kittens in the state, it'll just give you kittens in the search bar. And then
Yeah, you
stop
know, you
the
have to
button.
use that function when you start the application.
Okay. All right. Second, these two forms, handle input change. Remember from the last form, so handle input change is taking in whatever you type in over here. Okay, anything you type in over here, that's where the handle input change comes in. And submit or search button is the submit call. Same as the forms one. So there shouldn't be anything different. Remember this thing I showed you, we can convert that into this thing also. Okay, same as first two lines. All right, that works. Okay, similar logic from the previous one. Again, these two methods are not changing at all from what we saw in the forms one, so they both are similar. The more important part was prevents default, makes a search, whatever you type it in. The more important parts were the render and the way these are distributed. Okay, the more important point over here is the design pattern that has been used. How would you have to do it? I mean, you could remove this one and just use these two also, pass in the state and do it. That will also work, but kind of distributes it separately, easier to test, easier to understand, and easier to maintain. All right, always go for that. All right. Let's see. Okay. Questions? Okay. So next exercise, go and take a look at the next exercise. Very similar. It's using Ajax. It will kind of give you a look at the code. Take a look at how the code is again distributed. And this one, do it with a partner. Do it with somebody, with your neighbor. Kind of go over it. Make sure you both understand how the code is distributed. What's this one? How the code is distributed and what's going on. Okay. You will see a lot of components over here. Don't let that scare you. This is just as your web page grows, you have a lot more UI elements on the screen. They are just distributed. So these are already should be done for you. But take a look at it and understand. Run the code and understand what each component is actually doing and where on the screen you can identify those components. Okay. Looking at it, there's one container. There are two containers. Take a look at it, what those two are. And it tells me those are the ones that are using the state. The rest of them are more related to the UI part. Card, column, row, search form, movie detail. Okay. Yes. So that completed. Oh, that's good.
How did you create this project? Was it using the NPM?
Yeah. There are more than one?
Number 3.
Oh, 3?
We're on number 3, right?
Yes, number 3. Number 3 unsolved. So just to give you, so you will see this part. So what you would do is you will create your own app and then replace the components, copy the components over, copy the utils over. You don't need the index.js. You can use the one that default creates it. The only thing up to you guys, either you can copy the app.js to or convert this into a class component. I usually convert it to a class component for the app part. Well, I don't do it actually. My default when you create the React app, it comes with the class component. All you can do is copy this part, OMDB container, copy the import, and just paste it over there, and it should be fine.
Yeah, somehow my NPM packages, after I install Axio, just screw up, so I have to reinstall after the NPM install.
That's what I'm reading. They're saying that your NPM packages got some.
Yeah. I don't know why. Now it works. Instagram.
You know, I just opened it and I was reading, and somebody was saying, "Oh, it looks like your NPM packages are messed up or something. You have to reinstall." Huh. That's weird. I don't know why that would happen.
I got a module that said FS events is compatible with Windows 32.
FS module. What are you doing? What are the steps?
I did join that Axios.
But did you install? Did you create your?
Yeah, I have my React app made already.
Huh.
There's like do the yard.
What was that?
I got the same message.
Does it say
It's an optional
Windows
event.
32?
Yeah.
Is it a warning or is it?
This says info.
Oh, okay, so it's just an info,
Yeah.
because your systems probably have a thunk to be able to run 32-bit apps, so don't worry about it, it shouldn't cause you a problem.
Mhm.
So your Windows has always had a built, trying to be able to run 32-bit apps, even when
Okay.
they had 32-bit width, they had 16-bit and
Hmm.
so forth. And
Okay.
sometimes these systems will come up and they'll give you a warning to tell you that if you're going to try to run a 32-bit app, Axios is not compatible.
Oh, that's what it is saying.
Yeah, it says
Hmm.
FS event, blah, 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 is an optional dependency built compatibility check excluding it from installation. So
Well, good thing is you're not using FS 5.6 right now.
I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Oh, I did run it. You don't have the
Mine's still trouble.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What? You're still running? What?
Whenever I install Axios, it runs.
From the first, from when you told me it's still running?
No. That was the first time.
Oh,
when we started this
Yeah.
project. I kicked it off and about to keep it still going.
I'm kind of thinking, should I create a project or not? For this one.
Just keep avoiding it.
Yeah. I should have done it before.
But now we know to take a long enough time, or it's usually we reach out.
Yeah, that's the, now you guys are scaring me. So I created all the projects for other exercises, but these one I left it out. Let me see if I did. Yeah, I left this out. I was like, I'll create it in the class. And now I'm like,
You might want to start now.
yeah. Right. So guys, keep working on it. My packages are still installing. I'm pretty sure you guys figured it out.
We'll figure it out by the time this year.
Yeah.
Oh, not the lock in the other one. I thought I saw it. No.
It becomes like, I don't know. I use
Why would you want to set the state of something as the user types in this case instead of just when they submit the form?
Right. So you see that value part, and we are taking that value.
But why? Why would you want, like, instead of,
Oh, yeah.
like, as they're typing, why do you want to set that instead of just
Oh.
setting the entire string once they hit the button?
Right. So it's setting for our use case because we were trying to display it on the top, right? Username and password and all that stuff.
Oh.
So that's why. But yeah.
Well, even for, like, the Ajax instruction, the Ajax,
Right.
like number 2 that you did, the when you showed it to us,
Oh yeah.
No.
they have it on, like, handle input change.
Okay.
They have, like, a function
Oh, I see.
specifically for that.
Oh, this is a different.
On the, yeah.
With my original.
So right there, they're setting
Yeah,
the state.
This one?
Yeah, they're doing it as the form is filled.
Yes. Yep.
Instead of just, why wouldn't you want to do it when the button is just clicked?
So
Like, would you not be able to just do this dot set state?
right.
Take the whole
So
value of the text?
right. So where is this value coming from?
Did I?
This value is coming from this thing, right? Event dot and event. You will only have the value from this part. You don't have access to event dot target in the search button. See what I mean? So what is happening is you don't have access to. When you click the button, there's an event, but the event is part of the button. It's not part of this. All right. And this value, the string that is on the, it's only coming from this part on key event. So you want to set it over here. Keep setting. I know it's a repetition, but that's the solution. It's kind of super fast, but that's the solution so that you have the exact and the right value. You can't access it over here anyway.
Even if you, well, like,
Yeah.
this is the
You need
button.
to save it into a variable somehow, right? And that's what we're just saving it to a variable. Basically. That's what's going on.
Oh, that's true.
Question.
Yes.
So like, we didn't use the bind anymore. So because the React now is transparent to the system, it's fine. But like 2 years ago, we have to use the bind.
Oh, the constructor bind?
Yeah.
You know, I haven't looked at into the bind part. I'm not sure what it does. Every time I create the app, it never puts the bind part over there. Is it from the previous one?
Like I watched some tutorials like 2 years old, and all of them use bind.
Oh, they use bind.
But maybe because the
Oh, that's
because
old.
now the React that has the transpile, right?
Yeah,
And all
yes,
these-
yes, yep.
We don't have to get that button.
Right, we don't have to. Yeah.
But before maybe they didn't have that.
They didn't have it, they
so
have
that,
to
That's
do
why
it.
you have to use the
Yeah.
bind.
Could be. Let me find that out. Yeah, but in the recent examples, I haven't seen the bind one. What's it called? Bind.
What says the file? Yeah. Oh, anyway. It's 92. Not anyway. But. Oh, so it'd be like right. Oh, there it is. Oh, there, and then you tell us that to search it. Yeah, so that's what's kind of like that. I was oh, okay. So, yeah, that's so once you know that initial order, then you can have it, okay? Oh, that's true. So the next piece. Oh my God.
Yes.
In your handle input change,
Mm-hmm.
write that down. So you're calling name and value because on the form side, those attributes are name and value.
Yes.
Okay. So you're specifically referencing those. Like,
Yeah.
you can make those variables name anything.
Yes. But you have to change it in the form. You cannot change it over here first.
On the left side of
This one?
no, up above, where it's
These two?
yeah,
You cannot.
they have to be exactly as they are.
Oh, if you're using this syntax, then it's fine. Yeah, but if you're using the curly bracket, you cannot change it.
You have to, right, because it explicitly knows.
From the form. Right. Yes. In this one, yeah, this should put name over here. Yeah, they should work.
Specifically referencing
Yeah.
targeting.
Yeah. This should work.
But it's not.
I'm just gonna
If you're using
What's on
the,
what's on the left has to be equal to what's
Yeah,
on the form.
so did you said you did,
but you can change it on the form and then you can change it.
so you can't do, you don't do, you still have to do an MTS screen React app and get it done. And then you design inside that. So you, I mean, what I do, I took the
It's
React
like
app,
if the
separate app.
like on the form, the name is equal to search,
The name is equal to search, yeah.
right? Like string literal search. What is that?
This,
What purpose does that serve?
if you look at your state, that's where, so we are referring to that state variables. If this was something else, then we would be referring.
So when you write it with the curly brackets, you're saying the name.
This one?
Yeah. So like if I wrote it the other way. So
Yeah, because you went inside, it didn't create anything.
So this name evaluates to
whatever's in the search bar.
exactly
Right.
the label, the part of the form. In the form, you are giving input label a name. I think it's search, so it will evaluate to search. And the biggest reason for doing this is, let's suppose you don't do it. You just assign state dot search is equal to value. This will also work. This is equivalent of this thing, right? But suppose you have another input box.
Right. It'll never. Yeah. Exactly.
Then you have to write another one and says state dot search 2 is equal to this.
I'm just trying to understand the relationship between on the form where you're the input box
Yes.
then has a name attribute equal to search.
Right.
I'm trying to understand how
Yep.
it gets passed to the input change and then back into the state.
Okay.
Because like how does it like when we're setting the state, we're setting name equal to the value that's in the box, but
Yeah.
how does that know then?
So console log event dot target and take a look at that. So you will see an HTML coming out.
I guess my question is how are we setting like how does that set to search?
Oh. Yeah. So it's the search form, and this is how you're setting. You're
Because the
So
name
once you're
Yes.
inside there,
specifically references search when you set the
Yes.
state of name it knows to
That's
set
just like it's basic.
right. It goes here, looks up name, finds search, and assigns it. If you mess this up, it will assign it to a search 2, but you will get an error because you don't really have it. But yeah, so this is any type over here will mess up the whole thing.
now that makes sense. Because this set state is just looking at the form at whatever attribute you're essentially going
Exactly.
with the attribute on
Yeah.
the form.
It doesn't care what this is. It could be name 1, name 2, name 3. Doesn't matter as long as it matches with that. Yes. Yes.
Here,
So you've got to some that you're gonna cut something. Yeah, okay.
So children is anything that is
Yeah.
here. Okay, so you could have a call and call end. So anything between this is children. You got it. What was that? Oh, so remember the question mark?
Oh yeah, if
The-
and if not then
So the condition.
yeah. Yeah.
It should be coming from the parent if, and you're saying it's the parent, so it should be coming from there. Yes.
Basically says if you got fluid in the parent,
Yes.
get the value. If you don't have
Oh, yeah.
then
Yeah. So maybe that's the case that you have the fluid that maybe since you're not passing in, right now it doesn't work, but you can put something fluid. I don't know what fluid stands for over here.
I think it's a container fluid that puts the glass.
Oh, that's what it's referring to. Oh, it's so that you can shrink and do it. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, that must be it.
We have props with parents as well. We got props children, but we have
No, there's no. It's only props or props. It's only unidirectional. If you remember, it goes from top to bottom, so it cannot go. Yeah.
Always like,
How are we doing on the exercise? It's like finished? Done? You guys done? Ah, wow, okay. You guys are ready. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so it was like the old school version, but it does the same thing. The only difference is it's essentially good. You can use like the product. So if you look at this stands for each one of these stands for something like representation. So there are like I think 6 parts to the recipe here, and they say it has to follow all these 6, then you can follow it with your recipe. So that's the architecture for this. For soap, you don't have to follow these standards. The 6 comes for the on the recipe. So that's the difference. Yeah, that's why. That's the first difference. That's so state is the same variable that we have been discussing, but it's the same thing. Oh, so state. So from the content state is part of each component and refers to basically the state of the world. If you change something, if there is something more interactive with the right, then you can change it. Since probably cannot change something else that you want to change. And then what happens is, so that's where state comes in. So anything you can change if you don't want to approach it professionally. So that's where state comes in. Store the values that are being changed into view that comes in. You will see your page on the top level refresh. But you are changing a lot of yeah, that's the power of it that you don't have to go back and keep anything that you want in more interactive, you just state. All right. Still. Well, this installed. All right. For those of you guys who have finished this exercise, please take a look at the next one. 04 conditional render. This should take us to lunchtime, afternoon. After lunchtime, I can go over the solution for this one. But take a look at conditional render and exercise and see what you can figure out of it and understand what's going on. Not a lot of code. For the solution, we'll take a look at it. But conditional rendering basically means condition. If else is a condition, right? That's what it is. So if something happens, I want to render this component. If something happens, I want to render this component. This is what is going on in this exercise. So take a look at it. It's not anything different or new. It's just the way these components are calling. Right? They are being called based on a condition. So take a look at this exercise. We'll come back after lunch. We'll take lunch at noon until 12:45, and then we'll look at the solution for this one. Meanwhile, I will run this one, and then show you guys if somebody is still working on it. I think I got everything. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't need this. I need to remove this part. Just need this, so I'm going to put this in my container. Okay, and then import this, and that should be it. Okay, and then let me copy the components. Components and utils. Copy this. And my app.js should be happy. Okay. And I have Axios installed. I have all the apps. And let me see. Oh, maybe the this thing. Slide this out, right? Oh, maybe it was in the README. Let's see. Okay. I think that should be it. Let's see. It's coming up. Slowly. Huh? Oh, there it is. All right. Any questions from the previous exercise? Do you guys want to look at any component? It should be very similar to the previous one. I know there were some conditions. Let me see if I can find them. Sitting container. Yeah, the only thing that stands out is the question mark. Then guys familiar with it is the if else. You cannot use if else inside the DSX, so that's why we'll have to use the conditional ones. That's the only thing. So remember this one, it says if this is the condition you are testing, if this is true, then do this. Otherwise, if it's true, do this. Otherwise, do something that is after the colon. Okay, this is the if condition, the short form of the if condition. Okay, that was the only thing different. Different over here in this example. Okay, let me know if there's anything else from this part that you guys want to look at. Otherwise, start the next exercise. Take a look at that's kind of a little bit longer exercise. Might take you some time to understand how the code is distributed. Okay. What I found about this part is this that you don't see if you're using set state. Somewhere that's where it comes in play, but we haven't looked at it. I mean, there's no like a set state in any of these uh, functions over here. Oh, there is one over here. That's what I was looking at. If you want to use this, then you bind it on the top. But we are using this. I still need to look more into what's the. It's not giving an error. It should give an error if that was the case. So in the end, for your exercise for condition render, this is how it should be looking like. We have some tabs on the top. If you don't see these tabs, these are coming from Bootstrap. To make sure you include that link in your index.html. After lunch, I'll show you something interesting about this solution also. Like what are kind of like the drawbacks other than writing a lot of code, and that would tie in into our React router portion.
Even when you look at this example,
So in the documentation that they give you, you can do in the window you can set up an object and then just do the conditionals if state state dot current page var and then random log else is dot state current page equals valid and go valid. Or it's just in the window where you're supposed to have text where it says please this dot state. But you can do
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to get this stuff that I tried to work on
All right, we'll start back at 12:45. 12:45.
When you're comfortable,
Yes.
So, like if I put the here, it shows that if I put this current page, it should be so the syntax has right. Which should be the same.
It's very economical.
And,
I have it.
yeah, so based on what I'm going to change here, it's going to change the state here. And if you got page, you should get one day to a page. But and I can go to the page as well.
with the pricing area, I'm trying to find what's the
Unexpected token.
okay, put it in a parentheses.
Curly.
Oh, I mean curly is fine, but before curly.
So I don't know why because it's going here. Here it's reading this. Should I?
Oh yeah. Oh.
So you can do it this way too.
So you are this is fine. You're missing the this is the HTML tag.
Yes.
So this is working with assigning it.
So
I don't know how you
because I'm putting this here.
it's evaluating, but there's like nothing better off HTML tag to should go to a copy.
Because then your method is not
Yeah.
function.
So
Well, the current pages, it's going to be random.
I don't know if you run
Correct.
so I cannot use the value of the state.
No, they're saying the idea, especially React, is of going from function to token, which means your function should have no impact on outside.
Because if I give the home, it gives me home. If I give the page, give me page.
Right,
So
it works over here.
Yes.
Home is HTML.
So I just assign to the, but still I can use the value as the element, right?
And then
Because I can assign
this.
this
You cannot assign it
as
to
attribute.
no, you can assign it as an attribute,
Yeah.
but not an element.
So I have to change that to have that.
Right.
That I
What I don't get
no,
is
I have to
how
change
much
the function. I want to change.
Handle page change will keep edit something.
So you still need a
That's what that
JSX
does.
element
Render.
and then put
Okay.
somehow an
Does that
attribute.
make sense?
But
So
But you want to render a
setting the state has nothing to do
element
with
versus an attribute. You see what I mean?
Okay,